¿Qué tal, familia? ¿Cómo estamos? Bien, ganó Milei. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo! Pero a la izquierda no le ha gustado a nivel mundial. Ya sabéis que aquí siempre le dice la extrema derecha, la derecha extrema. Vamos a ver el show, un vídeo del show de Ben Shapiro, este escritor, politólogo, en fin, un chavalito jovencito que da gusto verlo, oírlo, donde deja retratado a toda la prensa zurda llamando a Javier Milei que se parece a Donald Trump y a Jair Bolsonaro. Y le dice a Javier Milei que es libertario, que es de la extrema derecha, que se parece a Pascal. ¡No! ¿Y sabes lo peor? Donald Trump le dijo a la Argentina grande otra vez. Uy, cómo se nota que Javier Milei es malo. Bueno, os dejo con Ben Shapiro. Un besito, mediante.
Javier Milei is extremely scary. That's what the legacy media have decided. The newly elected libertarian conservative leader of Argentina is absolutely frightening. Axios calls him a far-right libertarian who's been compared to Trump. The New York Times writes, Argentina braces itself for its new anarcho-capitalist president. Braces itself. They call the election Argentina's Donald Trump moment. Who, asks the Washington Post, is Javier Milei, Argentina's far-right president-elect. Here was the coverage from NBC News.
A controversial figure known by his fans as the Crazy and the Wig for his larger-than-life personality and hair. At times compared to Brazil's president Jair Bolsonaro and former U.S. President Donald Trump, who congratulated Milei on his victory, writing, quote, "Make Argentina great again" on his Truth Social platform.
Trump congratulated him. This means he is scary. Or try Abby Phillip on CNN.
So there is some nuance here in his libertarian worldview. He takes soft approaches to, for example, trans rights. He supports gay marriage. He says, go ahead and sell your organs if you want, that the state should have nothing to do with that. But underpinning his rise is that anger. In Buenos Aires, Milei's fans reveled in his win, shouting, "Out with all of them." And they're now counting on Milei to drain their own swamp and engineer a way out of decades-long inflation.
We
know that there are people who are going to resist. We know that there are people who want to keep this system of privileges for some that impoverishes the majority of Argentines. To all of them, I want to say the following. Within the law, everything. Above the law, nothing.
Now, that is the anger. That is the point. And it's a phenomenon that's fueled far-right figures everywhere.
Big caption in the background. Anger fuels far-right rise. Because, of course, everybody who's not left-wing is angry. And everybody who is left-wing, including the people who are currently all over the world protesting in favor of Hamas, those people are nice and happy. In fact, here is a bunch of the legacy media ripping on Javier Milei.
A far-right outsider compared to former President Donald Trump has been elected to president of Argentina.
Coming from the far right, Javier Milei.
A far-right politician.
The far-right politician.
Far-right candidate.
Far-right outsiders.
Extreme right-wing.
Milei is just way out there on the extreme scale.
Argentina has elected a right-wing populist.
Right-wing populist.
Right-wing populist.
Javier Milei is a populist who lacks government experience and displayed erratic behavior and foul language.
This is potentially a worrisome development.
He's promised some radical measures.
Wielding a chainsaw to symbolize his war on government spending, threatening vital public services.
He has absolutely no experience.
His screeds resonated widely.
His screeds resonated widely with Argentines,
particularly young men.
Milei's controversial tirades against the political class have drawn comparisons to neighbor Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro, as well as former President Donald Trump.
He has been deemed the Donald Trump of Argentina.
Milei's campaign drew comparisons to Donald Trump's here in the U.S.
Milei, who has been compared to former President Donald Trump.
You can guess who congratulated him by saying, "Make Argentina great again."
Make Argentina great again.
Maybe these democracy forces will, in the end, get overwhelmed. But that didn't happen in Argentina, not even close.
Anti-democracy forces. He won by 11 percentage points, but apparently it's undemocratic. Thanks to Media Research Center for putting together that montage. This, unsurprisingly, is not the way the press treated the election of former convict and left-winger Lula da Silva in Brazil. The New York Times reported last year, quote, Brazil elects Lula, a leftist former leader, in a rebuke of Bolsonaro. Who, the Washington Post asked, is Lula? What to know about Brazil's president? Milei, as we've said, is one scary character. So, what are these deeply frightening positions? Well, he's called for a vast cut to Argentina's government, a necessity since Argentina has defaulted on its debts 3 times since 2001. They currently have $36 billion outstanding to the International Monetary Fund, and they now face another default. They received a $57 billion bailout just 5 years ago. Thanks to out-of-control spending, Argentina has had to print pesos hand over fist, which is why, according to the Ministry of the Economy, total money supply in Argentina skyrocketed 30.7% every year from 2007 to 2022. The poverty rate in the country is currently 40%. I mean, I wonder why people might want to change. Well, Milei comes into office promising serious cuts. His media appearances may be colorful, but that all serves a purpose, a determination to make massive change to Argentina's economic trajectory. Milei has promised to slash and burn his way through government, cutting 11 of 19 departments of the government completely. He campaigned with a chainsaw he pledged he would use on the quote-unquote parasitic state. Here he is, campaigning with it, like picking up a chainsaw up and down. It's great. He wants to draw closer to the United States and Israel and away from China. Here he was yesterday talking about that.
Nuestros ejes fundamentales son el libre comercio, la paz, la libertad y alinearnos con Occidente, digamos, donde los máximos referentes en esto para nosotros son Estados Unidos e Israel.
Y en cuanto a China, es uno de los socios principales de comercio.
Bueno, serán socios comerciales del sector privado. Nosotros no hacemos pacto con comunistas.
Pero entonces, ¿qué harías? O sea, ¿no cerrarías las relaciones de Argentina con China?
Yo no promovería la relación con comunistas, ni con Cuba, ni con Venezuela, ni con Corea del Norte, ni con Nicaragua, ni con China.
O sea, para Venezuela vas a cambiar la política.
Obviamente.
Claramente.
Milei, in his inaugural address, pledged radical reform.
Hoy se termina esa visión de que los victimarios son las víctimas.
Today brings an end to this vision that the perpetrators are the victims and the victims are the perpetrators. Today we retake the path that made this country great. Today we embrace the ideas of libertarianism. This model of decadence has come to an end. There is no turning back. His reforms include closing the central bank. That is the institution printing money hand over fist. Milei recognizes the reality. Inflation has crippled Argentina's ability to recover. He has called pesos garbage, not even useful as fertilizer, which is true. They are worth pretty much zero in Argentina. All of this should be treated as good news. Argentina's trajectory has been a total disaster area for decades, despite the glorification of Peronism at the hands of Hollywood. And in fact, the markets are treating Milei's election as they should. Argentine stocks and bonds have jumped on Milei's election, mainly because he's the first leader of Argentina in generations who has a plan to actually avoid economic default. Milei's election should be treated by the United States as the possible opening of a new era in South and Latin America. Along with El Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele, a new wave of conservative governance may be building in the global South. That would be incredible given the so-called pink wave that has washed across the continent over the course of the last few years. So then, why the heartburn? The answer is, there are many in the United States and Europe, particularly on the political left, especially in the media, who somehow feel more comfortable with the socialist radicalism of Lula da Silva, Gabriel Boric, even Nicolas Maduro, than with anyone who smacks of libertarianism or conservatism. That's because Argentina is a living example of what happens when corporatism and social democracy are taken to their limits. The substitution of government for markets, the overregulation of industry in pursuit of social redistributionism, the attempts to create autarky, meaning everything produced in country, via tariff protections and trade restrictions, the dependency theory Marxist nonsense that has dominated Latin and South American politics for 2 generations, the endless populist promise that if all power is given to the government to protect the people, all will be well. That promise always results in privation and misallocation, in tyranny and poverty. Milei's victory represents that realization. So leftists label Milei the worst slur they can think of. He's just like Donald Trump. So now the media and the political left will attempt to shovel all of Argentina's failures on Milei's shoulders. Milei is walking into a hornet's nest, into a room that is completely on fire. Milei still faces a partly Peronist legislature, as well as a court system stacked in favor of leftist foolishness. The Supreme Court magistrate Horacio Rosati recently said that any attempt to dollarize, meaning to get rid of the peso and instead substitute the dollar, would be unconstitutional and a violation of national sovereignty. This means that Milei's power may be curbed. He still faces entrenched economic problems, including a dearth of valuable currency to move toward dollarization. There aren't enough pesos to trade for dollars to get the country's currency back on solid footing. He will require an infusion of foreign capital in order to right the ship in Argentina. And then, if he comes up short, capitalism and economic liberalism will be blamed for the failures of generations of Peronism. This, by the way, is always the pattern. Corporatists ruin economies, and then capitalism gets the blame. This was the story of the 2007-2008 economic crisis, in which the federal government subsidized subprime mortgages at exorbitant rates, and then when everything fell down, they blamed capitalism. But Milei can succeed. Investors need to look south, to put their money where their mouth is, to ensure that Argentina realizes its potential as a massive source of prosperity, wealth, and power, and that alliance with the United States and the West grows stronger as a result.